Thanks for your patience this morning. Those of you that jumped on a little earlier, we'll have a few folks I suspect that are going to be jumping on here. Yeah, we keep getting more coming on. So one of the things, first of all, if you're first time, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. This group has grown, continues to grow. It's something that we have done for, gosh, I don't know, well, since the middle of March. I think we've done over 17 or 18 of these now, and the feedback's let me know that it's something I need to continue to do. And when we've got great people like we've had, and great people like Andrea today to come on and share, I just think it's a great opportunity. So thank you for coming around. One thing I like to go around the horn with everybody, just very quickly, one word that explains how you feel this morning, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And Rich Howard, my good friend from long ago, longtime friend. Rich, we're going to start with you because you're in my upper left quadrant here this morning. Why don't you kick us off with one word that explains that for you?
Dragon.
Dragon. Fair enough. We have those. Mark Gunkel, how about you?
Refreshed.
I love it. Kristen? Oh, you're muted.
I got to unmute. Okay, sorry. Organized.
Love that one. Jeff, how about yourself, my friend?
Winning.
Okay, I love it. Andrea, you want to chime in? One word that explains how you're feeling this morning, mentally, emotionally, physically. Huh?
Yeah, excited.
Excited. I love that. And my good friend, Chris Marshall. Chris, glad you're on here this morning. What's your one word that describes your mental, emotional, and physical being today?
Growth.
Okay, very good. Is it Laney or Lane? I'm mispronouncing it. Well, we'll move on. Brian, are you there? You want to chime in on your one word?
Happy to. I'm pretty hungry this morning.
Hungry. There you go. But that has a lot of meaning. Ramon, how about you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm at the get my car tires repaired, but I feel excited. So that's one word, excited.
That doesn't surprise me. All right, we'll go one more. We'll move on. Nicole, how you feeling this morning?
Grateful.
I love it. Very good. Very good. Well, listen, you know, that's a funny exercise for those of you that maybe haven't joined us before, but I think it's really important that we give some thought to how we're feeling. You know, I was thinking this morning, sometimes you come into a day and you're a little tired, a little groggy, and I've been doing a morning swim thing here the last few weeks, and I got to tell you something. It's getting cold. The pool's cold at 7 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning. But I find that not only does the physical exercise help, but just that shock to the body does a little something to wake me up and kind of prepare me for the day. So I'm always interested in how people are coming at things in the morning. So thanks for doing that. So we've got more people joining here, so we'll continue to do that. Everybody's on mute. If we're not speaking, I appreciate that. Let's dig in and let's get Andrea on the table here. And Andrea, I just want to hand it over to you. I want to talk about Go for No. As I thought about today's call and the whole Go for No kind of philosophy, it really had me wondering about a lot of things. And I know sales is important. You know, we talk about revenue and profits and sales, but I'm interested to see your take on what Go for No means in today, right? Like what we're going through today. But why don't you, for those that maybe didn't listen to the podcast yet, that's a shameless plug to go listen to our episode, which was really good. Share with us a little bit about the background of Go for No and your background to give everybody a little context of what we're doing today.
Gotcha. Sure. Absolutely. Thanks, Rick. So Go for No is it's kind of a combination of three things: mindset, philosophy, and strategy. And it actually came about from an experience that my business partner and husband had, Richard, who was selling suits for a living, and his district manager taught him this go for no idea. And fundamentally, he was basically failing at his retail job selling suits. A customer came in one day, the district manager was there and watched him have this great sale. And Richard had this great sale because everything he showed this man, the man purchased: a suit, a sport coat, slacks, shirts, ties, everything. The district manager said, out of curiosity, Richard, what did that customer say no to? And Richard said, nothing. He bought everything I showed him. What are you talking about? He didn't say no to anything. And then Harold, the district manager, said, well, then how did you know he was done if he never said no to anything? And Richard had to admit that he ended the sale early, and like I think a lot of us kind of do in our heads, shut the sale down. And Harold said to him, if you could just learn to get over your fear of the word no, I think you could be a great salesperson. And he did. He said, just go for no. And that was really the catalyst in his career. Many, many decades ago now. Well, not many. That might be a little harsh. But that was the catalyst, and it stuck with him. And Richard became an award-winning salesperson, not overnight, but eventually did, and went into training and management. And this was a story that he shared all over the place, and people loved it. And he shared it with me, and it immediately impacted me. And I realized how much I avoided hearing the word no. And eventually we quit our corporate jobs, launched a training company. And it was one of the things that we would teach, along with a lot of other sales philosophies, customer service philosophies, management philosophies. And it resonated with everybody that we were teaching it to as well. And so we wrote a book in 2000 called Go for No. It's a short fable, 80 pages. And fundamentally, and we've since really, really expanded upon the teachings of and the nuances of this concept. But the fundamental concept, and this is why I call it a mindset philosophy strategy, is to intentionally increase your failure rate, to intentionally go out, hear no more often, be willing to fail, want to fail more. And when you do that, the success will come. And Rick, to your point about even where we are today, there is going to be, we all are facing more obstacles, greater obstacles in our lives and our business. And so embracing those no's that are probably going to be out there more than they were, say, 6 months ago, is important. And as a life philosophy, it is kind of a failure way to success life philosophy.
That is great because, I think like you, I remember failure was like every day, right? When I started my career, it was on the phone, smiling and dialing, and no. And it would physically impact you on certain days, right? Mentally and physically. My question, what I'm curious of is in that business that I was in back then, it was more aggressive. Today it seems like, and I think it's a good thing, it's more relationship driven, more figure out the problems than it is, I've got your solution, is this something you want? So how has that changed, in the way that you guys are delivering Go for No in the concept? Can you share an example maybe? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, it's interesting because so much has changed over teaching this philosophy for 20 years. And you're right. I think in the beginning, we very much focused on this idea that success is a numbers game, sales is a numbers game. And to some extent it is. And and someone said in one of our books one time that, and I loved her quote, she said, people aren't numbers, right? Sales is a numbers game, but people shouldn't be numbers. And I love that because I never wanted to translate negatively. And so initially it was kind of like, hey, get out there and tell your story as fast as you can to as many people as you can. And again, to some extent, I think that's important because what we find is, and this hasn't changed, is that people do have a fear or anxiety, or however you want to house it, around getting rejected. They don't want to hear no. We have all been taught and trained to avoid failure, avoid rejection, seek success. So somehow get to yes without the pain of hearing a no. Like, how can we do that? And so there's a certain amount of that still to this day, we say, get out there and tell your story as fast as you can to as many people as you can, to encourage people to get the quantity up. Because what happens is when we have that fear, the quantity goes down, right? Because we're cherry picking and we're picking and choosing. Who can I somehow magically, mystically figure out is going to be the safest yes for me, because I don't want to hear no. That has not changed. What has changed is certainly technology. And I think, to your point, the idea that, yeah, we don't want to treat people like numbers. And these days, the marketplace is so much more transparent. And it isn't necessarily the way it was, which was just commodity selling and you're getting on the phone and dialing. Some businesses still operate that way because that's just how their business is. But so many have transitioned to this relationship idea. Still, though, it all still applies. Millennials who don't want to send a LinkedIn message because they're fearful of rejection. I mean, what is biologically wired inside us exists today. And even though the technology makes reaching out to people easier, we still have to fight that biology.
Okay. Great point. So as I'm listening to you, and I think back on my own sales career, how do you take the distinction between, getting out there, telling your story as much? Well, let's start here, right? Like that initial no that we hear so often. What has your experience in the work that you do and the coaching and teaching that you do? What's your experience taught you in that initial no?
Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a couple things to that. One is this fundamental idea of who are you reaching out to, and are you able to identify your ideal client, right? Your ideal prospect. Sometimes people find themselves in businesses where you have no idea. This is where the technology comes in, which is really interesting. And so you get on the phone and you start calling, and your goal is simply to figure out if you're talking to a qualified prospect. And so to that end, it's all about disqualifying as quickly as you can, right? To figure out if this person has a need for what you want, or what you have, sorry, and perhaps they have a want for it, but really to kind of disqualify as fast as possible. And I think that when you do that, right, if you can do that, you can see quick results. But if you focus on intelligence, which is figuring out, okay, who is my ideal prospect? And I'm going to research them on LinkedIn. I know the industry, I know the business. And so when you're reaching out to them, it's really not to figure out, are they qualified or not? You already know they're a qualified prospect. You already know that this is the perfect client for me. I can help this person. I have the solution to their problem. Now, they may not know they have the problem. They may not be as aware of it as you are. And so you need to educate them about this problem that you see, but they're the perfect client for you. And so in that scenario, when you get that no, it's definitely different than the quick disqualification no that you would get in the other method. And that's the moment where you really have to say, instead of just, okay, great, thanks, bye, it's, wait a minute, this person is qualified for what I have. I have the solution to this. So in that moment of getting that no, it's, instead of goodbye, it's, what's my next best move? And how do I keep this door open to this relationship? Maybe they've said, we're very happy with our supplier. We'll never leave, the person that we're doing business with. And so you think, okay, they just told me never. We like to say no doesn't mean never, no means not yet. So you have a choice. Do I try to continue this relationship? Do I keep the door open? How do you handle that no? And to your point, Rick, super, super important mindset around this. That's why we say go for no as a mindset and a strategy. So your mindset's got to be, what's my next move? What am I going to do? And then strategically, what can you put in place to keep that door open? What can you say? What can you do in that moment? Can you ask some questions in that moment to turn that no, maybe not to a yes, but into a, all right, yeah, I'll keep the door open. Hey, do you mind if I check back with you in a few months to see if anything's changed? Do you mind if I stay in touch with you just so perhaps I can add value to you in the future? And have that person say, all right, sure, why not? And then you continue to add value, and then a year from now, what was a no, what was a kind of, no, we're never gonna change, now becomes a, you know what, I'm willing to take a look at what you have. So that's really that process of how you deal with that no.
It's a good point, and I want to open it up for the group to see if there's any questions. I have a few more, but you hit on something, and I think sometimes, especially when we're just starting a business or we're really trying to ramp up sales, we get in this, hey, they're not turning quick enough, right? And we talk about systems a lot. We've talked about it a lot the last few weeks, but really how to manage that, those maybes, those no's that you need to control, vitally important as well. So it's not just that initial conversation or that second conversation, but it's a whole system of how you're going to develop the relationship. Is that what I hear? That's kind
Yes.
of your thought. Agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, listen, like I said, I got a few more questions, but this is not a quiet crowd. So I want to pause and just see, what questions people might have, because what we have here in the audience, Andrea, just to let you know, is we have some people just starting their entrepreneurial journey. We have others that have been in a few years, and we've got others that have been in business for many, many years. So I just want to open it up to the crowd and say, hey, here's an opportunity to ask Andrea a question. Does anybody raise your hand if you would, and let me know, and be happy to open up the mics. Jeff.
Okay, so this is going to come out like I'm thinking about this as I'm saying it, so it's probably going to come out all wrong. But I'm thinking about the idea of continuing to add value after the no, and this is something that I do. Adding value to the relationship, but you hit kind of a capacity with the number of folks that you can do that with. I have built into my system kind of like screens where it's like at a certain point it really is a no. But can you speak to that capacity and actually, continue to add value? Just going on to that, like the idea that when you're adding value to a relationship, it has to actually be relevant value. I think I see a lot of people that are just, let me put you on my mailing list, and then I never read those. So I don't know if that keyed or triggered anything in your head, but that was just sort of where my mind was going when you were saying that.
Yeah, I love that point. You're right. And sometimes I think that you might have to put certain prospects into buckets. You may, it may not be ideal, but you might have somebody who you say, gosh, I don't want to just wipe them off of my radar screen and pretend they don't exist. So I am going to put them on my mailing list. It's probably not ideal, but it is your way of saying I don't want to lose this potential client. And it does require some discernment of who you think, I guess in almost like a hierarchy, are the people that you really, really want to get a yes from, right? And so you're right, there does come a point where it's like, okay, I can't manage 400 contacts who've all been a no and could turn into a yes. So you've got to make some decisions of, all right, well, this group needs to be put in this bucket, which is they're not going to get as much of my attention. And I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on with their company or with them, and maybe I don't go to their LinkedIn profile, but once every 6 months, but someone else, I might go and comment once every couple weeks or once a week, because they're just that perfect, ideal client. And so that, I think you were so right about that discernment. When we get to those kind of numbers, those are the tough decisions that we have to make.
Very good point. Very good point. Any other questions for Andrea? Go ahead, Rich. Oh, there you go.
Hey, Andrea. So, love the whole go for no concept. I was just wondering, do you have strategies to help people? Like you said, we're all wired to not like no. So what kind of strategies do you use to get people over the hump? What do you do? When you find someone who you think is totally awesome and great, but just can't get over that hump.
Yeah, so it's an interesting way that people kind of fall in this idea of dealing with rejection. And when Richard and I have spoken to crowds of like 1,000 people, and I will tell you, there's always one person that comes up out of the 1,000, and they say, they're always proud to come up to us because they walk up and they say, hey, that was a great presentation. I'm so glad you guys were here for everyone else, because I have absolutely no fear of the word no. It doesn't bother me. It just rolls off my back. I can hear no all day long. And they're usually they're successful, these people, right? They say, it doesn't bother me, and they're very successful. And I always say, like, well, you are the 1% here in the room that this is not an issue for. And then you probably have 60 to 70% who, like all of us, because we are wired, struggle, and we can force our way and kind of feel like we're beating our heads against the wall and get really depressed sometimes and want to stop our activity. All of those things that happen, those emotional reactions when we get a lot of rejections or get that one important deal that we wanted, and then it falls apart, and it can be devastating. And then you do have 10 to 20%, I would say, who just have so much anxiety. And we have some of these people like in our course, and they join our Facebook group, and there's no amount of strategy or trick or hack that I can give somebody in that 10 to 20%. They have such anxiety about it, and it's probably outside of my pay grade to try to help them with their issues. The middle group, the 60 or 70%, is the sweet spot. And as crazy as it might sound, it really is about embracing this idea of failure and this willingness to fall on your face, to be embarrassed, to not have to be perfect, to hear that no and get rejected along the way. And it is, I would say that is probably the number one thing, is when people can change their mindset. We have a little very basic graph in our book that is the old model of failure and the new model. And the old model is where you see failure and success as choices. And we think we have to do everything within our power to move towards success, away from failure. Really, the new model is you have to embrace those failures. You have to be willing to be that kid that you were on the bicycle at age whatever you were. I was 8, and fall off, and you didn't care that you looked like an idiot, and you were going to do whatever it took to ride with your friends, right? You were going to do it. We've got to get back to that and be willing to go through the hard struggles instead of do what we all do in business, especially new people starting out, which is, I've got to be perfect. I've got to get yes. I can't hear no. And this, there's no room for me to mess up. So that is the strategy, and getting comfortable with that.
Rich, I'm sorry, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I just like, what does that look like when you're helping that 60 to 70%? Like, I'm assuming you have a program of some sort. Is it weekly, monthly? I mean, I just want to get a picture.
Gotcha.
If that's okay.
Yeah, so I appreciate you asking that. And beyond our digital online course and reading our book, and we've got a something we call the 21-day Go for No challenge, where we encourage people to set a goal for the number of no's they're going to hear and put this stuff into action to get it implemented. That is kind of how you take that mindset and you put it into action. But I don't offer any kind of weekly, mindset coaching call to work through these issues. It really is kind of on your own, self-directed, but to constantly be applying Go for No and to be testing yourself and pushing yourself to hear no, that is how you kind of develop that failure muscle, if you will.
So, Andrea, I want to rip up the script, as our friend at Bloomberg would say, for a second, because one of the things, we're talking about sales, and I totally agree. Matter of fact, I remember having a rubber band on my wrist. That was like my deterrent, right? When I didn't want to make another phone call, I would zap myself with a rubber band. I mean, it didn't work very well, because after a few times you just throw the rubber band out. But here's my question. So we're in a new era where social media, we do the podcast, we're doing these calls, and, people, I'll use myself as an example, or I'll use Ramon. He had to jump off, but Ramon just did a 5-hour live event, and it was really scary. And when you put yourself out there in different situations, the thing that crosses your mind is, man, if this fails, right? And then you're always going to have detractors, people who don't think you should be doing it, or you're not doing it very well, or those kind of things. So it's a little different from sales, but I'd just be interested, let's be honest. You didn't start out doing all the social media and doing the live events and those kind of things. And it takes courage. And to me, when I hear Go for No, I truly believe that that's the part, there's something inside of all of us that's almost like the governor, right, in our minds. I couldn't possibly do this because people would make fun, or they'd think it's foolish or whatever. Just curious what your thoughts would be on that as you apply the Go for No strategy.
Gosh, yeah, absolutely. You said a lot. I mean, you said a lot there, and it is about having the courage to fail, and it is about getting out there and doing things as quickly as you can and literally failing your way to success. And you're going to have detractors and naysayers, and people are going to, I think back to the beginning of our business, everything was bootstrapped, and everything now was completely laughable. I mean, the idea that the main reason why we were successful actually is not because we had any money or that our materials looked good. They were atrocious. But we were very clear on our ideal prospect, and we spoke their language. And that, I think, cut through the clutter. And in today's world, you're right, there is so much more clutter. And so I think that when you can specialize and you speak the language of the person that you are trying to help, the better you can speak their language, the easier it is for them to say, this is my problem. This is exactly for me. And yeah, you exclude a lot of people. So I'm getting off track a little bit because I had to add that in, because that was our success strategy right there. And even when we transitioned from that business, which was helping retail organizations, to just teaching Go for No, which Go for No is for anyone. Anyone who has a fear of failure or rejection, whether they sell insurance or whether they're opening a car wash, I mean, it doesn't matter. But this, you do have to embrace the mistakes and embrace the failures. And yeah, it's terribly scary. There's a kind of a model that we have in one of the workbooks that we just created. Actually, it's called the Go for No Leader. And the model has to do with the comfort zone. And when you think about the comfort zone, everybody says you have to get outside your comfort zone, and you do, but you don't have to get out of it all the time. And you don't have to put yourself in the panic zone, which is kind of where you freak out and you don't want to live in the panic zone. But it is about pushing yourself out into that uncomfortable spot, like Ramon doing that that event is fantastic. And the next event, that was outside of the comfort zone, not in the panic zone where you lose it, but just outside. And then what happens is he's going to get to come back to where he is now, and having that experience just kind of increased and expanded where he is now. And then when he does it again, he'll step outside his comfort zone again. It'll be scary, and he'll worry that people will judge him, which is just such a huge issue, that we're so fearful of being judged and that people will, how they will think of us. But you get outside your comfort zone again, and then when you come back, it's just expanded just a little bit. And you just do that enough that before you know it, it expands. You know, the perfect example is, I'll never forget, like the first book that we published was called Unlocking the Secrets of Retail Magic. It was a little 64-page book for our ideal prospect. And we were so excited, and we had a book party and invited coworkers from our previous job who everybody thought we were absolutely insane and absolutely crazy. And every book that we published was just this, it was just terrifying, right? To push the publish button and to have your work go out there. And now we do it, and we literally have, like, my pulse rate doesn't even go up. I don't have any nervousness publishing something anymore. What used to be just this terrifying process now is just like, half the time, Richard, my husband, he doesn't even know we've published something. You know, I have to tell him it's selling now, and he's like, oh, that's good. When we sold our very first book, I remember we got the order through the fax. It was $8.20. The book was $6.95 plus shipping. We were absolutely thrilled. It was the first money that we made in our own business. And now today, you know, we'll get paid for a speaking engagement of, you know, a great fee and 5-figure fee, whatever. And like, that is how the comfort zone expands. And that's what I think, it's hard to remember in those moments, but that's just how it works.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's what I want to encourage in all our entrepreneurs, is if they're thinking about something that they want to do, you know, the world is just so much different today, and it's easier to do a launch. It's easier to get your ideas out there, as long as you can get over the mental hurdle, like you said, and your philosophy picks right up with it. So let's open. I've got more questions, but I don't want to monopolize them. I want to make sure anybody else on the call has a question that they'd like to ask Andrea this morning. Go ahead, Kristen, I see you.
Part of this is a comment, part of it's a question, but, and I know there's some other professional service providers, you know, not like selling a retail product but providing professional services. And something that struck me, coach that my partner and I have been working with, is they said, when was the last time that you didn't have a client engage because the fees were too high? And we were like, He goes, your fees are too low. And so what it made me think is kind of that go for no idea. I think we're undervaluing our services because we're so afraid of people saying no that we don't want to really value our services appropriately. And so I don't know if that struck. I mean, I know like Jeff provides professional services. That just kind of like smacked me in the face, that idea. And then also teaching our younger associates to talk about fees and be upfront. And part of their job when they talk to a client is disqualifying them. Are they wanting to do something outside of our area of expertise? Is it in our area of expertise, but they want it for $300 and that's not what we do? Kind of, you know, because our time is our money, is what we're selling. And so I don't know, this idea of people pleasing and being afraid to hear no, I think it's caused us to be not as profitable as we need to be because we're so afraid of hearing no. And so what you're saying, though, you're talking about selling products. it really resonated with me. And so I don't know if you have some professional services folks you've worked with and some things to add specifically to that area that would be helpful. I guess that's my question.
Yeah, Kristen, such a great point. I'm glad you brought this up. And you are so right. In fact, I remember the first training program that we wrote the book. It took us a few years to create this training program. And one of the things that we had in there was if you are somebody who brags about closing every deal that you have, then your prices are too low because you shouldn't be closing everyone. And you're absolutely right. Combining that with also this idea that we make assumptions about what people are willing to spend, what they're willing to do, what they're going to decide. And assumptions are the kryptonite to Go for No. Having those transparent conversations up front as quickly as possible and being willing to disqualify someone saves everyone so much time. And as salespeople, because salespeople typically are business owners, want to hear yes, oftentimes they don't say what needs to be said. They would rather pretend that this is a deal that could come to fruition and could eventually be a yes. They don't want to see the handwriting on the wall, right? They would rather just kind of say like, oh, no, this could work. And another important piece of advice that we say all the time, and this is so true, we've made these mistakes, we've made every mistake that I'm telling you guys, believe me, I've made. And the advice is, you know, a good no is better than a bad yes, especially in the services business, because you can't get that time back. You are so right. It's not about just selling a product and then maybe having that person return that product and saying, oh, well, guess we shouldn't have sold them that. You could spend a lot of time. And we've done that actually as a when we were more of a training company, got a deal where our intuition was not to go forward with these people, and then we did, and then we actually tried to fire them, and they were like, no, we want it, we know we want to work with you guys, no, we'll behave, and we said okay, and we went forward, and then it turned into a kind of a disaster, and we ended up sending them a huge chunk of their deposit back and doing a lot of work. So yeah, a good no is better than a bad yes. And to your point, raising your fees to where you'll start getting pushback, and you go, okay, this is where the sweet spot is. Also, the interesting thing, and I've heard this throughout as a speaker, as a professional speaker, this is very common in the speaking world when it comes to services. The more you charge for your speaking fee, the better the client takes care of you. And people want to see, as what Richard always says, nobody wants to go see the $500 an hour speaker. They want to see the $10,000 an hour speaker, right? And so there is a limit because your clients at some point, I just, in fact, lost my accountant that I love because our relationship kind of came to an end because he is working with such huge volume businesses that it just wasn't a fit. But so you know where your sweet spot is, and make sure that you'll get better clients from having the fees that you want without pricing yourself out of that market and then being forced to go into clients that you don't want to work with. I think you get what I mean.
That's an interesting conversation, and it goes a lot of different directions. And I'm just curious, show of hands, those of you that we can see, how many of you have held on to or taken on a client that you knew up front was maybe not the right fit? Right? Like, we've all been there, and we do, it's for various reasons. If we're starting out in business, right? Well, man, if you can fog a mirror and want to talk to me, we'll do business, right? And then over time, what you realize is that's where all your problems come from. It's where you're spending too much of your time. And I don't know if this is a Midwest thing or not. We're kind of right here in Oklahoma, and I think we're good people. We don't like to offend anybody. We don't want them. And so a lot of times we think our fees, we're charging too much. And I think you make just a wonderful point on upping that. And I think that's a go for no category, right? Like, is it time to assess what you're charging and really be honest with ourselves? You know, I'm going to pick on my buddy Chris Marshall for a second, because first of all, Chris is brave enough to be on this call and knows I'm going to pick on him. But Chris is a veteran, and I'm going to use this. One of the things that Chris is doing, he's learning where he wants to be, but he is working with Scars and Stripes Coffee, which is a coffee that gives proceeds back to veterans as a way to support that. And I've ordered some. Chris, I'm curious, as you've got this opportunity, because this is a go for no kind of thing. You're offering a coffee that is a little more expensive compared to others. It's good, by the way. I have some that I've bought. But what obstacles have you come up against as a new entrepreneur?
Well, first, thanks for the order. Appreciate that. Well, one of them is the fact that we're not the only coffee brand out there. Now, I, from what I've researched, I think we're the only ones that actually give back to veterans. But there are other coffee companies that have been started that are similar to that. Some are even started by veterans, by other veterans. Trying to think.
So what's been your biggest obstacle, Chris?
I guess it would be more of getting the word out, or trying to explain, you know, exactly what the proceeds are for, what the whole thing's about, and getting the word out without spending a whole lot of money.
So Andrea, just kind of put Chris on the hot seat a little bit, something that I like to do with our community, and they're gracious enough to come back. But what would you share? What were your thoughts with Chris and what he just said?
Right. So in today's world with technology, I would say the great thing is that if we were back in 2000, I wouldn't even know how to really help you, except to say, go stand on a street corner and right, and hold up a sign, and maybe people driving by will go like, hey, I need some coffee. But we can do that now with social media, and I think that's why branding is so important, messaging is so important, so that people understand. But a go for no strategy for you, and something that Richard and I have used throughout our building of this message, is to influence the influencer, and to find veterans out there, perhaps, or people who are connected with veterans issues. And I'm going to leave that to you to figure out, you know, who that is and research those people. But let them know what you're doing, and and send them some coffee, perhaps a sample or something, and with a thing, which is, and make your ask, which is, you know, I'm looking for people to help share the message, whatever you're willing to do, whether it's an email or a video or Facebook Live or, you know, a tweet. Everything and anything helps. This is our mission. This is what we're trying to do. So go for no in getting help for helping share your mission. That's kind of what popped into my head.
That's good. That's good. Make sense, Chris? All right, buddy. Well, hey, anybody, we've got 15 minutes here to wrap up. I've got a few things, but any other questions for Andrea?
I didn't really have a question for Andrea so much as just a comment on the conversation between Andrea and Kristen regarding pricing. I recently did a competitive review of, you know, my competition in the area, and just looked at their pricing relative to their features and services. And it was so informative, you know, and I echoing Rick's comments about, you know, folks fogging a mirror. You know, I have a number of clients that I, you know, have taken on like that over the years. And I too have been in the position where I never lose a sale, Rick. I don't lose them. In fact, I started this whole conversation today with I'm winning, right?
Yeah.
And it's because my prices are too low. And I know that. And I know that now because I've looked at my competitive the competitive landscape. So I encourage you, Kristen, to look at your competitive landscape. And I actually had other people do it for me. So, which was really cool. So if you have that capability and capacity to like have somebody else, reach out to your competition and find out about their features and pricing and that sort of thing, I encourage you to take advantage of that and make it happen.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little tricky. We're pretty transparent on our fees and pricing. Some of the other competitors are not quite so much, but yeah, an investment advisor looked at our fee schedule and said, I think it's too low. I mean, based on what he had seen out there too. So anyway, yeah.
Well, I'm going to do a shameless plug. Kristen, let me get my stuff finished up before you jack up the prices. So Kristen's wonderful at what she does. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. Andrea, what parting thoughts do you have for this group as we go into our Friday and wrap up the weekend?
Yeah, so I mentioned this idea of a Go for No challenge. So I would just challenge everybody to see how you can go for no. It really is a life philosophy. It's certainly a business and sales philosophy. But in those moments, and we call these Go for No moments, there's the moments that you have where you have this opportunity to ask a question or to close the sale or whatever. There's Go for No moments throughout in some processes where you might have many times where you have the opportunity to get a yes or a no from a prospect or a customer during the transaction. And in the old world, when we're focused, I guess I call it the Go for Yes world. In that world, we usually talk ourselves out of those asks because in that moment we say, they're just going to say no, so why should I bother? And this because of course you're psychic, right? That's how you know. And so I would just say, take off your psychic's hat, set that aside, and in those Go for No moments, just say, I'm just going to ask. And even if I feel like a little awkward about this, or maybe the timing is wrong, the faster you can open yourself up to doing those transparent things, having the courage to do that. Courage really is just building that muscle. That is what it is to do a Go for No challenge and to execute on those Go for No moments. So I would say, do a challenge. You can do a challenge for a day. You can do a challenge for 30 days or 21 days and just see, how many no's could I hear? Like, could I, in those Go for No moments, try to hear no? And what's funny is, and I hear this all the time from people, they say, yeah, so I was all excited. I was like, I am going to have the courage to hear a no. I am going to ask the question. I'm going to get a no, and I'm going to be proud of myself and say, I did it. I survived. I got a no. And then they end up getting a yes. So it's funny how that works oftentimes when you just remove the pressure of, what are they going to say? You just say, I don't really care what they're going to say. I'm just going to build my courage. I'm going to ask and just see what happens. So that's what I encourage for everybody to do.
I love it. It reminds me, I'll never forget, the biggest producer in the Dallas office that I worked at 25 years ago, on his birthday, he faxed over the CEO of a company that he had been dripping on. He's like, today's my birthday. Please take my phone call. And just totally ridiculous. I would have never done that. And he got a phone call. The CEO called him. And they started a relationship. And, I think we put so much restriction on us. We have to be a certain way. We have to do this. At the end of the day, nobody cares, right? And I always joke. I think the thing about being 50 is I care less today. I care a lot, right? Like there's two different ways of caring. I care that we're being valuable to the right people. I don't care what anybody else says, right? And it's freeing when we can play in that world. And so that's the encouragement that I want everybody to really walk away is, what area right now in your business do you need to step outside your comfort zone and up the Go for No? Because that's where the breakthroughs are going to come from and the courage is going to come from.
Rick, one last thing on that. When you think about like Go for No, it's she's applying it to sales, but it also could apply to your relationship with vendors.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's a good place just to practice it is, they want to make the sale to you. So, all right, well, how low can you go?
That's right. You got all sorts of song references today, don't you? Good. It's a good point, Jeff. I've missed you. I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. Any other questions for Andrea? Okay, so let me wrap up. I hope this has been great. By the way, I've got 3 autographed copies, as always. Here's what I wanted to know. My question, by the way, I don't know if you can see this, but I have a ton of stuff that's going out in the mail right now from our last call, which was really unique in its own. And we went for no in a big way on that and had some really good things happen. If you haven't watched the video that we did with David Jennings and our own Mark Gunkel, it's good. I just put it out on YouTube, so it'll make its rounds. But Andrea's got a great book. It's worth a read. Here's all I want to know. What's one thing right now for you that you really need to go for no on, right? Send me that. I'll put you in the drawing. We'll send these out and share them with everybody. Andrea, so grateful to have you. Thanks for taking some time with us this morning. Hopefully we'll get you back. And if you haven't listened to the podcast with Andrea, it's a great, if you're out on a walk, run, whatever it is this weekend, check it out. Couple things. Our next Freedom Series call is Friday, November 11th. And that's significant for a lot of reasons, 9/11. But what's interesting is our guest is going to be Michelle Rigby Assad. Michelle joined the CIA as an operative a month before 9/11. She spent 10 years in the Middle East, undercover. She's got some great stories. Her and her husband came back to the States and started their entrepreneurial journey. And so we've got her as our guest on September 11th. And so be on the lookout for that. We have some additional things coming out, but I'll send that out to you as well. I want to leave you with a personal story and a challenger request for you to consider. This Tuesday, Monday night, I headed down to Dallas for a funeral for a client of mine that I'd had for 25 years. And, if you've been in business for a long time and you have clients, these are relationships, right? I always say the business just seems to really, the business is the business. It takes care, but it's the relationships. And I had played golf with this guy so many times. He knew my family. He knew my wife's family. Just a great relationship. But he'd been dealing with some health issues, and I knew it. And I just so happened on my way home, I like to make some phone calls, in that 15 minutes, and I'll do that. Some of you have probably gotten a phone call from me on that. But this particular day, a week and a half ago, I called him. And we had a nice conversation. He was going in to have a valve replacement this week, ironically, because he had been having some heart issues, and he was excited, and he told me all about it. We got to have a conversation. And I share that with you because it really kicks me in the stomach, just personally, to see people that we've had these long-term relationships. This is really life, right? But we're talking about go for no. When you put it in the context of the bigger picture, we should all be out playing in our go for no every day. So my challenge to you is I thought about this driving back from Dallas. Here's what I thought about. I want to challenge each one of you to spend 5 minutes today or tomorrow this weekend. Reach out to somebody without an agenda other than to check on them and let them know you're thinking about them. Because for me, I just never know when that's going to happen to somebody, right? We don't know. And I just think the world needs more connection right now on a personal level without an agenda. So don't mean to get too mushy or philosophical with you, but I just want to encourage you to think about that. And maybe somebody pops in your mind right now, spend 5 minutes, make the call, not an email, not a text message, not social media, but make a phone call and just see how they're doing. So with that, thank you. Have a great Friday and have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.